Okay, so first off, let's just show off the front end to show that it is in fact working. So over here, if I go to the base, I can in fact log in and enter a password and log in successfully. I can see all of my different events. These events are linked to my MongoDB. So as you can see, there's 8 of them here and there's 8 of them here. I can go here, I can even book them, I can see my bookings, and you can see also the dates which they are made. Chart works. You can also do or create new events, and then it will create the events, and this will carry over to our MongoDB. So this is just proof that everything works. Now, how we are going to separate this is into two separate functions. One is the query of GraphQL, and the other one is mutation. I will first be taking a look at mutation, and then when I'm done with that, Tom will go on and show off the query. Now, starting from the front end, I'm going to take a look at only one of the functions out of the several that there are, which is just the create event. So, if we go and show this off inside of our code, if I go to the pages inside here, we have our events page. Now, this event page has a button down here, which is the create event button. Which on confirm, it will then pop up all this information, such as the title, price, date, and description, will be stored and be used later on. So let's go and take a look at the model confirm handler. This will simply set the creating state to false. It will take all of the data we just entered, meaning the title, the price, the date, and the description. It will go and verify it quickly just to check if it's not null or if there's anything entered. Once that is done, it will then return that data. Once that data is returned, sorry, I'm just finding where it is. Here we go. It will go and trigger the mutation inside here. So this is the exact same format for the mutation inside GraphQL. So if I go inside GraphQL here, you'll see an example mutation right over here. You have the create event, the information you want to input into it, and then also the information that you want as an output. Now, a thing with GraphQL and the difference between it and RESTful APIs is that here you can specify exactly which kind of data you want returned. Where in RESTful APIs, it returns all the data at once, to which you then filter out which data you want. This is just the format for now. I'll show this later if I go into the backend. But basically, it will trigger that command. Then it will also send in the context token. This is the context token generated when you log in, and it creates a JWT token, which is then also sent back to the backend to be handled inside of our authorization only requests. And over here is where we actually send it back to our GraphQL using a post method, and we just put all of the information inside of a JSON format. Going back to the backend, inside of app.js, we can see where all of this originates from. This is where GraphQL is being used. Now, the GraphQL HTTP requests that we just sent to here is going to be separated into various parts. Now we have the schema and the root value. The GraphQL is the graphics interface right over here, which you can send post requests through as well. But let's go and take a look at the schema first. Schema is located inside of our index.js, and it is being imported above in here. Now, to take a look at this first, we need to understand where our mutations are being created, and those are being created inside of our root mutation. Namely, the one we're going to focus on today is the create event. Now, the create event is the name of the function, so to say, of what's going to be used inside of GraphQL, meaning it's right here. Then we're going to take the event input. The event input is the array name, and this is going to be the data that's going to be inputted inside of this object. This event input has been defined up here. So as you can see, it takes a title, description, a price, and a date, all of which is non-nullable, which means that the field cannot be empty or doesn't have a value. And then it will output a value of event once it has inputted all of the data inside of here. Then it will output it inside of a fashion like this. But I won't go into this in detail, as that is Tom's part. So to just show this off, we have our mutation, our create event, our event input, and then the object inside of it containing all of the input information, and then obviously what we want to get out of it. Down here, we also have something called request headers. This is the authorization key we need to input once we log in. Now, let me just go and quickly log in. Luckily, I have already created an entire text file to contain all of these, so that I don't have to do it every time manually. Once we log in, we can simply go ahead, copy this token. We're doing it manually because the backend doesn't have any functionality to automatically insert the token with your request. That's something only the front end does. Now, once we have our token, we'll be logged in for 1 hour, to which we can then return to our mutation and go ahead and create an event. And this will be carried over inside of our MongoDB. Wait, no, sorry, not done yet.
Okay.
Where was I?
Go to your resolvers.
Oh yeah, I was in index.js. Okay, so that's just where we get our information from inside of GraphQL. But obviously, the backend needs to be able to process the front-end data as well. That's where all of the other modules are going to come in, mainly our resolvers. Our resolvers are is the modules which are going to be processing all of our data. So inside of our resolvers, we have one query and one mutation. Now, since we're only going to be looking at events, I'll also be only looking at events. Now, there is a query and also a create events. In this create events, we input all of our data. We store that data inside of an event variable, which is going to be used later, and which contains the data we just entered, including the creator that's created it, because in order to create an event, you do need a creator. That's the whole reason why we have an authorization, because the authorization is linked to the user through the JWT tag. Once all of this information has been inputted, we can then go ahead and create the event. Or not create the event, but send back the data of the event. This will then go ahead and pour in the result that has been created up here inside of what's called the transform event. This is kind of like a model which will just make it compatible with the front end. This will be inside of our...
You're looking for the
Sorry,
transform
merge.
event
Yeah,
method.
merge.js. Sorry, I just was looking for it. Inside of the transform event, we basically have our format data inside of here. This will fetch all of the relevant fields and spread it out evenly. So it's basically like the map function. It'll also fetch the ID. This will be the object ID of Mongo. So this right here. Then also the date, which is auto-generated through the helper over here, which is just to ISO string. And then it will also input the user. And then once that transform event is finished, it will eventually send it back to the front end. I'll just show off where this is. I'm just going to go and search for edge. There we go. And it will have its events over here, which is already the formatted data, to which it can then use that to display everything else. Now we can switch over to Tom's side.
Cool.
Nice. Good.
Alright, cool. So basically, I'm gonna explain how a query works in this application. So basically, when we click the events button here, we receive all the events here in the front end. So as you can see, that happens as soon as we click the events button. So basically, a query was basically sent to the database to fetch all of this data. So firstly, in our front end, there's this link in the nav bar for events. When it's clicked, over here in our app.js, we have the route. When that event link is clicked, then this component gets mounted, the events page. So basically, in our events page, as soon as that component gets mounted, we have this component did mount method, and within it there's the fetch event method that is called. So that's gonna fetch all the events. So basically find that here, right? So this fetch events method is basically making that that query basically to the back end to fetch all the events with the specific structure of the query. So to see how that works in our GraphQL, I have here the query, and when it's called, when it's sent, I receive all the events over here that are saved in my database. So specifically with GraphQL, you can basically get the exact data that you need. So I could just get the ID, description, and date, and the creator, and it shows over here. So it gets that specific data. So yeah. So once that query is basically sent and this is received, basically what happens in order to receive that data is in our back end, we basically have one endpoint, right? So it's not multiple endpoints, just one endpoint where all the queries and mutations are sent to fetch data and send data and all of that. So that specifically is made with Express GraphQL, right? To help with requests. So when I sent that query, that request was made to this endpoint, and basically what happens is after that it checks the structure of that data in our GraphQL schema, which we basically find in schema index. So that is basically over here. So we'll basically check if it matches the structured data in our schema. So we have the type of data event, and it checks, okay, that it takes an ID, title, description, price, and the creator of that specific event. And then we come to root query, and within it we have this key value pair events, and it's basically saying that it's going to return all the events after that query is made. So when the structure of the data is checked in the schema, after that we go to our GraphQL resolvers. So we're gonna look for it's gonna basically look for the resolver that handles that whole request basically, and we find that in resolvers index. So that's basically here. So in our root resolvers, it has basically all the resolvers composed in one. So since we're working with events, we're going to use the events resolver, which we find in our events here. So basically over here, this is basically the resolver method that handles the query. So what happens is it uses this find method to go find the events, right? By using the event schema, and that is basically stored here in this constant events. Then it loops through all those events using .map, and before it returns those events, it uses this transform event method, like Ulrich explained. So basically, this transform event method is just formatting like the nested data within it. So when it receives that that data, it formats that data. So it formats the date, and you can see we have the creator or the user basically nested within that structured data. So it formats basically this data over here, because it's nested within it. Then after that, it just returns the data. Then we see it in our front end. So that's basically
Nice.
it.
Alright, you guys can stop the recording. You did show fluid explanations. So the focus point was GraphQL, and you guys successfully, you showed me on the GraphQL user interface, which is just a nice little